president turns 80, a war hangs in the balance, and an explosive, profanity-laced outburst has just shattered the carefully constructed image of unity between the United States and its closest Middle Eastern ally. Tonight, the world is watching a drama unfold that is part birthday celebration, part diplomatic crisis, and entirely unprecedented. President Donald Trump, marking his 80th birthday at the White House, has unleashed a torrent of raw and unfiltered fury at the man who leads Israel. The target of his wrath is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The words attributed to the president are so blunt, so volcanic, that they have instantly rewritten the narrative of the American relationship with Israel at the most delicate moment imaginable. According to Axios reporter Barak Ravid, who shared details of his Sunday conversation with the president on the social platform X, President Trump declared that Prime Minister Netanyahu has, and this is a direct quote, no fing judgment. The president did not stop there. His anger, by all accounts, was visceral and deeply personal. Ravid reported that President Trump told him directly, "Why did Bibi have to do a fing attack? I was so pissed off. I let him know. He has no fing judgment. I let him know that." The use of the Prime Minister's nickname, Bibi, underscores the personal nature of this fracture. This is not a diplomatic disagreement conducted through carefully worded statements. This is an American president publicly and profanely eviscerating the judgment of the leader of a nation that has long been described as America's closest ally in the region. The timing could not be more explosive. The president's tirade comes just as the signing of the U.S.-Iran deal to end the war is reportedly still on track for Sunday, despite an Israeli strike in Beirut and an Iranian threat to retaliate. The sequence of events that triggered this presidential fury began earlier in the day. The Israeli military reported that Hezbollah had launched 3 projectiles toward communities in northern Israel, describing the attack as a blatant breach of the existing ceasefire. Israel's response was swift and powerful. On Sunday, the Israeli military, acting on orders from Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz, attacked what it described as terrorist targets of the Hezbollah terrorist organization in the Dahieh neighborhood of Beirut. The Dahieh district, a southern suburb of the Lebanese capital, is widely regarded as a stronghold of the militant group. Israel's military stated that it had precisely struck a Hezbollah infrastructure site, but the American president viewed this response as a catastrophic error in judgment at the worst possible moment. Taking to his Truth Social platform, President Trump issued a statement that was part rebuke, part plea. He wrote, "This morning's attack on Beirut should not have happened, particularly on a special day when we are so close to a peace deal with Iran." The president acknowledged Israel's right to defend itself, but then delivered a devastating assessment of the Israeli operation. The attack Israel was responding to, he stated, was very small and meaningless. Nobody was hurt, injured, or killed, and should not disrupt this important process. The president's statement then took on the tone of a commander demanding that all parties stand down. "We are very close to a deal that will bring peace to the region, including to Lebanon, and all sides should stand down," he wrote. His orders were specific and unambiguous. There should be no more attacks by Israel anywhere in Lebanon, but there should also be no more attacks by any other party, including Hezbollah, against Israel. And then, a line that captured both his grand ambitions and his deep frustration. "This could be the beginning of a long and beautiful peace. Let's not blow it. Thank you for your attention to this matter." The backdrop to this extraordinary presidential intervention is a day that was supposed to be a celebration. President Trump is marking his 80th birthday today, June 14th, at the White House. The festivities are being orchestrated by one of his closest friends, Dana White, who is hosting a fight on the White House grounds. Approximately 4,000 guests, described as the president's and the UFC's closest friends, are expected to be seated on the White House grounds, with tens of thousands more fans attending the fight and a fan fest on the ellipse just outside the White House perimeter. According to the president's official schedule, he is expected to have a celebratory dinner with his family at 5:30 in the evening, attend the UFC VIP reception at 7:00, and watch the fights starting at 7:45. After the first punch is thrown at 8:00, a total of 7 fights are expected to take place, lasting into the early hours of Monday morning. But even as the party preparations continue, the business of war and peace presses on. According to the Wall Street Journal, President Trump is still expected to sign a deal, called by some a memorandum of understanding, before the end of the day. The journal noted that Iran has not yet signed a final agreement with the United States. President Trump reportedly plans to issue a statement imminently confirming that the U.S. has agreed to a deal with Iran. The deal, the journal reported, will either be signed electronically by the president himself or by Vice President J.D. Vance. The crisis unfolding on this birthday is a stark reminder that history does not pause for celebrations. A president who wanted to mark his 80th year with a show of strength and spectacle has instead found himself managing a very public rupture with a critical ally, all while the clock ticks down on the most significant diplomatic gamble of his presidency. The question now is whether his furious words will be enough to keep the fragile peace on track, or whether the events set in motion today will prove impossible to control. The world waits, and the president's birthday party goes on. President Trump's explosive criticism of Prime Minister Netanyahu has exposed a deep and public rift between the two leaders at the most critical juncture of the conflict. According to Axios reporter Barak Ravid, the president's frustration was not expressed in private diplomatic channels, but laid bare in a Sunday conversation that Ravid then shared with the world. The president's language, including the direct accusation that Netanyahu has no judgment, represents an extraordinary breakdown in the normal decorum that governs the relationship between the White House and Jerusalem. The president's question, "Why did Bibi have to do a attack? I was so pissed off," reveals a leader who believes his carefully constructed diplomatic framework was nearly destroyed by an ally's impulsive military action. Despite the fury directed at Israel, the machinery of diplomacy continues to turn. Ravid reported that President Trump confirmed the signing of the U.S.-Iran deal remains on track for Sunday, notwithstanding the Israeli strike in Beirut and Iran's subsequent threat to retaliate. The Wall Street Journal added critical detail, reporting that the president is still expected to sign what some are calling a memorandum of understanding before the day concludes. Iran, notably, has not yet signed a final agreement with the United States. The deal is expected to be executed electronically, either by President Trump himself or by Vice President J.D. Vance. The military events that triggered this cascade are clear in their sequence. The Israeli military confirmed that Hezbollah had launched 3 projectiles toward northern Israeli communities, an act Israel described as a blatant breach of the ceasefire. The Israeli response targeted the Daheh neighborhood of Beirut, a known Hezbollah stronghold. Prime Minister Netanyahu's office stated that the strikes were against terrorist targets belonging to the organization. Lebanon's national news agency reported that one strike hit an apartment in the Goberi neighborhood, with images showing plumes of smoke and debris littering nearby streets. Hezbollah, while not immediately commenting on Israel's strike, claimed it had launched missiles and drones toward Israeli troops in southern Lebanon. President Trump's Truth Social statement attempted to thread a needle, acknowledging Israel's right to self-defense while dismissing the Hezbollah provocation as very small and meaningless. His directive was unequivocal: no more attacks by Israel anywhere in Lebanon, and no more attacks by any party, including Hezbollah, against Israel. His closing words captured both hope and desperation. This could be the beginning of a long and beautiful peace, let's not blow it. As the president celebrates his 80th birthday with fights and family, the weight of war and peace rests squarely on his shoulders. That is the latest on this developing story. From all of us in the newsroom, good evening. That concludes our coverage of an extraordinary day that has seen a presidential birthday celebration collide with a profound diplomatic crisis. President Trump's profane and public condemnation of Prime Minister Netanyahu has exposed a deep rift between the two allies at the most delicate moment in the peace process. As the signing of the Iran deal reportedly moves forward, the world now watches to see whether the president's furious intervention will be enough to preserve the fragile path to peace. From all of us here in the newsroom, good evening.